Everybody wants to be, but nobody wants to do. Girl, it's time to be real, raw, and relentless. Everybody wants to be, but nobody wants to do. You know it's time.
Recrown you.
Today's episode is sponsored by Respect the No. It is a lifestyle brand geared against sexual assault. We know them, we are them, and we stand with them. For an exclusive 10% off your entire order, use code RESPECTME. Visit www.trulyinspiredlifestyle.com. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Recrown You, the podcast. It's your girl, Truly Inspired Martin. I am so excited about this episode, as I am every episode, because we are taking this journey together to free ourselves from our past. And just for all the new people that are joining us, Recrown You is a podcast that is geared towards millennial women who are ready to be real, raw, and relentless in their pursuit to unleash their inner badass. So what exactly does that mean? That means that there's some things in your past that you probably haven't dealt with, right? There's probably some things in your present that you haven't dealt with. And it's a part of the journey to really own who you are and become this person that you say you want to be. Now, trust me, this is a journey that I did not want to take myself, but I understood that if I did not reach back and figure out exactly who I was from the source of it all, then I was never going to become who I needed to be. So that's what we're here for, ladies. We're here to unleash you so that you can be all that you can be. So this month, we've been talking all things sexual awareness, okay? So we're getting ready to make a transition into Mental Health Awareness Month. And I kind of just wanted to tie everything together because we're about to make that pivot, right? So I definitely want to bring you guys some stats, as usual, because I think it's important for us to understand just how important some of this stuff is, right? So let's get some stats about sexual abuse and domestic violence. Here we go. So 8 out of 10 rapes are committed by someone the victim knows. Like, tell me just how deep that hit somebody just now. 8 out of 10 rapes are committed by someone a victim knows. Like, that breaks my heart because you just never know who's around you. You never know what's going on. And all you can do is be prepared and just be ready. And that's the sad part also, because you just never know. But I think these conversations, when we open up and have these conversations and get the knowledge, right, that's when some of this stuff changes. So here's another one for you. It is estimated that every 92 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted. Every 92 seconds. The average is about 321,500 victims of rape and sexual assault happen every year between the ages of 12 and older. Like, these stats are blowing me out the water because, like, these are things that I've looked up. You know, you've had to do research papers for school, or you work in this arena, so you look this stuff up. But when you really look it up and speak on it, it's like, wow. This is really a thing. So let's get into the mental health piece and domestic violence, right? So as many probably do know, I'm a 2-time domestic violence survivor myself. And I really try to look into all these different aspects of what led me there, what started the source of my pain, all of those things, right? And I start looking at statistics on mental health and domestic violence. Here are some alarming ones. Women with depressive disorders were 2.5 times more likely to have been victims of domestic violence. 2.5 more times. So imagine a lot of people that are dealing with mental health issues, women particularly right now, are dealing with these issues. And sometimes, because this thing is something we keep silent and we don't talk about, It's probably things that they haven't dealt with that have put them in these depressive states. So, more than 57 million people in the US, 18 or older, suffer from mental illness. 57 million people. Oh my Lord, these numbers are so alarming. And over 50% of women who live with a mental illness have previously experienced some sort of trauma, such as physical or sexual abuse, whether as a child or as an adult. I sat with these stats for a while and I almost was brought to tears because I'm just wondering how many of us are walking around with the pain, walking around with the hurt, and we don't want to start the conversation because a lot of stuff make us feel embarrassed. We don't want to talk about it. People are judgmental. People have so much to say, but they don't have anything to offer when it comes to advice or resources. So that's what we're doing here. We are changing the narrative. We are opening the conversation, and we are being real and raw when it comes to us as women unleashing who we're supposed to be. So let me tell you guys about today's guest. First of all, I just want to say I'm completely overjoyed to have this woman on the podcast because I've been following her for years. I am completely in love, okay? She has a heart for women, a heart for what she does, and just to have her here, I hope you guys are ready to take out some pen and paper, maybe some tissue. I don't know if she might drop something in our spirit that brings a tear, but be ready. Just be ready. Because this is a journey worth taking. So, let me tell you who we have today. We have Mrs. Tamiko Lowry-Pugh. Ooh! And if you don't know who she is, go ahead and go to Google right now and just type her name in. She has been featured on Fox, CBS, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, V103 Radio, Sheen Magazine, and more and more and more. The list can go on for days, okay? She is a legislative advocate. She is the first president of programs for National Coalition of 100 Black Women, the Mecca chapter here in Georgia. She is the founder of the Still Standing Alliance, which is a nonprofit focused on domestic violence advocacy, awareness, and preparation strategies. She is a survivor, okay? An advocate and expert on sexual assault and domestic violence. And let's not forget that she's an international author. Just so amazing. Mrs. Tamiko Lowry-Pugh is the empowering diva. And today, the topic is wounds to wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. Love the introduction. Thank you so much.
You're amazing. You deserve it. I am just so elated to have you here. And I know the women are going to get something from you today that, trust me, they need. So I'm so happy to have you. And let's get into it, right?
All right, let's jump into it.
So, who is Tamiko? Let's start there.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you?
So, outside of my bio, because that's a professional resume, but Tamiko is I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a friend. I'm that person that I believe people can come to in their time of need. But I'm a fun-loving person. Love to have fun. I'm a free spirit, and so literally most of the time I don't plan out a lot of things. I just like to do things at that moment. I believe that life should be lived, and if there's something that I want to do, I just do it. So that's who I am: a mom, a friend, a wife, a free spirit,
and an amazing soul. Don't forget that part.
Thank you.
So, how did you become who you are now?
I became the person that I am today based off of previous life experiences. I think when you introduced me, you talked about this specific broadcast being called Wounds to Wisdom, and just being wounded throughout life. We're all wounded in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through people that we know and love, strangers, different types of wounds, emotional wounds, physical wounds, spiritual wounds, and just experiencing all of those along the way and getting to a place where I knew that something had to change. There is a quote and I might be saying it wrong, but you'll repeat the same thing over and over again until you get the lesson. And I couldn't figure out why I kept experiencing the same hardships, the same pain over and over again. And it was because I never got the lesson. I hadn't turned those wounds into wisdom. I hadn't learned anything from them. And so I believe that God will continuously, allow us to go through some certain things until we get the lesson. And so I became the person I am today, being born to teenage parents. My mom was on drugs. My father was on drugs. Then myself becoming a teenage mother, experiencing sexual assault in my early 20s, thinking after that I had it together, and then getting into a marriage that was mentally, physically, and spiritually and financially abusive. And so that's what made me who I am today, just taking all of those things that I went through and growing wise from them and learning and making sure that I did not repeat that same cycle over and over again.
You spoke about cycles, and I think that is a major thing that a lot of people are missing, that component, right? Like, they're not seeing these cycles that go on in our families, that go on in our lives. And I think once you can actually target and see those cycles, then you can actually start to unpack that and unpack you. And I think
absolutely. There's so many cycles that happen from generation to generation, that most of us will call them the generational curse, and we don't always look at those. And it wasn't until I began to learn who I was as a person on the inside, and thinking back, it is actually when I wrote my first book, which is also called Wounds to Wisdom, and trying to figure out how I got to where I was at that moment when I was writing the book. And so I had to go all the way back to when I was in my mother's womb. And I took it from there. And she was in abusive relationships. My grandmother was abused. My great-grandmother was abused. There was just deep-rooted sexual assault that wasn't talked about in our families. And so going back and realizing that it was I guess you can call it a learned behavior. You don't know what a healthy relationship looks like because you see abuse throughout your childhood and until you become an adult, so you think it's normal. And so you confuse abuse with love, and I think that's what happened to me.
We definitely have some things in common there. Absolutely. I heard you earlier, you said, you touched on abuse, right? And you stated the other aspects of abuse, not just the physical. I heard the mental, the spiritual, the financial. Like, can you get into that a little bit? Because I think a lot of people think of domestic violence or abuse, period, as just the hands-on contact.
Right, and it's not always physical. And abuse it doesn't start like that. You don't go out on a date with someone and they slap you and say, you're going to be my girlfriend, or you know what I mean? So it doesn't start like that. It starts with other forms of abuse. So it might start with emotional abuse. Maybe the person is kind of slowly tearing you down. That is a form of abuse. Mental abuse, when you are controlling that person's mental capacity. The financial abuse, you might be at a place where you're getting an allowance. Maybe you're a housewife. That was my thing. My ex-husband was like, oh, I don't want you to work. You can do real estate or something on the side, but you don't have to work. So I looked at that, was like, oh, I'm lucky. Like, I hit the jackpot, not realizing I was getting into financial abuse because he gave me a certain amount of money in allowance that I can spend every week. But that money had to go towards food and things for the household and, toiletries and things of that nature. So when that was gone, it was gone. I didn't have anything else. So it wasn't like I had my own savings account or anything. So just small, subtle things like that, that's a form of financial abuse. The spiritual abuse, not being able to worship as you want to, or the opposite of that is using scripture as a way to make up an excuse for your abuse. So scriptures that talk about submission and things of that nature, kind of twisting the word to fit what you're doing. So those are different forms of abuse. And I always say it's just power and control. Anything a person can do to you to control you and to gain power, it is abuse, right? If I can look at you a certain way, and you get scared and I have control over you by the way I look at you, that is a form of abuse.
Right.
If I'm controlling and having power and control over you through finances, it is a form of abuse. That's the best way to look at it. That's the best way to define abuse.
I love that breakdown. And that's the real in it all. Like, we don't look at all those warning signs and those triggers, right? Like, I was even in that same situation with the financial part. Now that I'm really thinking back to it, it was kind of like, no, you don't have to work. Like, I got you, and this is what you can spend, and this is what you can do, and I'll take care of your hair. I'll take care of your nails. And you're looking at it in the beginning like, oh, this is great. But,
right, like, oh, okay, I hit the jackpot here.
right,
You know?
like, okay, this is what we all wanted, right? Hair done, nails done, all that stuff. And you're not even looking at the overall, like, wait a minute, you're only telling me this is all I have, this is all I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's deep. But what did
So
that...
many. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you.
No, I was just saying there's just so many small, subtle warning signs and red flags that we overlook. Even, something as small as telling you what you should wear or not wear. Controlling your wardrobe, or I don't like your hair like that. Those are those small, subtle things we need to pay attention to.
That is so true. You got me sitting here, like, really thinking back, like, wow, he didn't like that outfit I had on. He didn't like that dress I picked out that day. Like, it's one thing for your man to say, oh, babe, don't you want to wear something a little bit below the knee? Like,
right.
Versus, that other controlling aspect of it. I understand that. What did that do to you mentally? Like that?
Oh my gosh. Mentally and emotionally, I was completely broken. To the point where I didn't know who I was anymore. And so my life was literally, everything that I did was based on what this person liked. It had nothing to do with what Tamiko liked. And so I just became this broken soul that didn't like what I saw in the mirror, even though people, on the outside, people would say, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. You're this, you have a great smile. I didn't see that because the person that I loved didn't see that, would always tell me, oh, you ain't all that, you got a long way to go. You're this, you're not this, you're not that. And would put me down so much until I just was insecure about everything. And so you can be beautiful on the outside, but your insides are just totally destroyed. And that was me. And I always say I was a wounded woman walking. I was walking around wounded on the inside, and I probably looked great on the outside. But my insides were torn up. That's what it made me. So to answer your question, it made me very vulnerable, very insecure, and just very wounded on the inside.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to walking around making it look good. But
can't we? We can do that. Give me some red lipstick and some heels.
Hello. Fake it till I make it all day. And I was real good at that, and I think a lot of us are, right? The
yes.
I'm okay statement is very popular. And
yes.
You're really not. Ooh, that's deep. So we are on the border of Sexual Assault Awareness Month and Mental Health Awareness Month. So what do you think mental health, like what part does that play when it comes to sexual abuse and domestic violence? Like, we don't talk about mental health, right?
We don't talk about mental health, and I think we should, because most of the trauma that we go through throughout life as children, young adults, as adults, that trauma is a form of mental health. Like it affects our mental health and the way that we are in society. And so I think it's important that we talk about it. We need to talk about the things that we have experienced and how they affect our mental health. Even coming out of my relationship when I left my ex-husband, of course, it was like, oh, I'm out of this relationship, but now what's happening? Now I'm suffering from depression and I'm on medication. So that's a form of mental health. I had to take medication in order to function throughout the day. And back then I didn't even realize that was a mental health issue.
Yeah.
But I understand that now through research. And so even being sexually assaulted, just how that weighs on your emotion and your mental capacity, we need to talk about those things.
Yes, the conversation has to start. Like, we do these mental health awareness months, we do these months, that month, it's all these different months, but throughout that entire year, like, we really need to start making real strides towards making sure that, I'm trying to tell you, like, that mental health stuff, like, I really have to start researching and understanding. Like, a lot of me wasn't together. I didn't have it all together like I seemed like I did. And I never dealt with certain stuff. And I was going through the depression. I was going through the panic attacks and anxiety and not realizing it, right? Not realizing that I'm taking myself away from people. I'm isolating. I'm not able to sleep at night because my heart is beating so fast. Like, had to go to the hospital because I thought I was having a stroke or a heart attack, but it was a panic attack. Like, because there's certain things that trigger you and certain things you haven't dealt with, and mental health is just so key in really targeting that stuff.
It is key, but one of the things in the African American community, we look at mental health as this thing that we don't want to talk about, or I don't want to go to counseling, or I'm not going to go to therapy. Only crazy people go to therapy. And so that's the mindset that we have. And so we have so many people in our community just kind of walking around with these mental health issues. And it does not have to be that way. Therapy is good. Going to counseling is good. I mean, that's how you're able to talk through things and understand why you are feeling the way that you feel. So outside of the conversation, we just need to embrace the fact that it's okay to go to therapy. It's okay to go to counseling. It's okay to get help, and it's okay to talk about it. What we do a lot, we like to cover things up. So we'll, instead of going to therapy, we'll be like, girl, you just need to have a drink. Like, I literally remember going through this crazy divorce, and everybody would be like, oh, girl, let me take you out. Everybody wanted to take me out for a drink. Or, girl, let's go shopping. You just need to go shopping. Let's update your wardrobe. But it was never something that would help me internally. It was always what's going to help me on the outside. Like, yeah, I'm going to have this drink, right? Yeah. But what's going to happen when I wake up tomorrow with a hangover and now I'm depressed all over again? And so those are some of the things that we do to just kind of cover up, like masking everything.
That is so, so true. Oh my gosh. That's so true. And listen, I know all about, like, whenever I'm feeling down or something, I swear it's like nobody wants to talk about the real issue. It's like, let's go get a drink, let's go party, let's go do this. I'm like,
girl,
no,
let me tell you, when I left my ex-husband, I partied so much. I'm like, I did. I mean, and it was fun at the moment, but there was still some other work that needed to be done. But I did my share of partying.
I know you did.
Sweet Nights, I think it was called Sweet Lounge or something back in the day. Yes. It's still there, but it was called something else. I forgot what it was. Lucky Lounge.
Lucky, yes. I remember good old Lucky.
Yes.
But let's take a little small pivot. What does Still Standing mean? So you have the Still Standing Alliance organization, right? Mm-hmm. So give us a little insight into where did that come from? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so let me give you the background on Still Standing. Still Standing literally it was a way of life for me. It was my life mantra. I'm still standing after everything that I've been through. I've been knocked down and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm still standing. And I remember I used to go to Stone Mountain Park, and I would hike to the top of the mountain, and there was this rock that I would sit on, and I would write in my journal at the top of the mountain. And I called it my Psalm 62 and 2 rock. So Psalm 62, he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I shall not be moved. And then I threw in, I'm still standing, because I can't be moved because of, God being my fortress and my rock. I'm still standing. And so that's how I came up with the still standing concept. Literally just walking up to the top of Stone Mountain 3 times a week, writing in my journal. And that journal, some of the things in that journal actually became part of my first book. And then when I launched the Still Standing Alliance, it just made sense to call it Still Standing, because the women that we work with and the people in the community that we support have gone through so much, but they're still standing at the end of the day. So the Still Standing Alliance is a nonprofit organization where we focus on domestic violence advocacy, awareness, and prevention. And so those are our three initiatives: advocacy, awareness, and prevention. So advocating on behalf of victims' rights and domestic violence and sexual assault victims, making sure that the laws protect them. Awareness, meaning that we're literally just bringing awareness to the community. And under the prevention umbrella, that's where we train the community on domestic violence, sexual assault. So we have different trainings that we do via webinar or in person. And then we have our Survivor Empowerment Program, which is specifically for domestic violence or sexual assault survivors, where they can come in and get financial literacy training. We just did a self-defense class last month. What else do we do? Like a Dress for Success, career progression, resume writing, and things of that nature. So pretty much like life skills classes. Okay. And so that's what we do with the Still Standing Alliance.
I love it. I love the story behind it too. And shout out to you climbing Stone Mountain 3 times
Thank
a
you.
week.
It was so therapeutic. I told you I'm a free spirit, so the outdoors is very therapeutic for me. So climbing up that mountain was so therapeutic for me back then.
Love it. I love the mission behind it. I love what you're doing. And I see that you're a legislative advocate. So can you tell us a little bit about that? I know people.
Yes. So legislative advocacy. So that's basically a little bit what I said about the advocacy portion of the organization, where we advocate on behalf of victims' rights and things of that nature. But part of my personal profession as a legislative advocate, what I do is figure out what is happening with domestic violence victims or sexual assault victims. How do we approach this from a law standpoint, from a legislative standpoint? How can we make certain laws come into effect? And so last year, I jumped on board with Marcy's Law for Georgia, which was the Crime Victims' Rights Bill. Georgia was one out of 14 states that didn't constitutionally protect crime victims, but the accused has constitutional rights. And so as a legislative advocate, I was hired to come on board and literally create a plan, and just pull together a plan and a program on how we could make this law, how we could change the Constitution. So I literally traveled up and down the state of Georgia for like a year and a half, interviewing crime victims on what their experience was like as a victim, being re-victimized in the system, not understanding what their rights were, and literally gathered all that information. And that's what we would present to our state representatives and our senators. And so we literally went through an entire legislative process to get this bill approved, and then finally got the governor to sign off on it. And then in the November election, it was on the ballot for the public to actually vote yes or no to add crime victims' rights to the Constitution. And so now the crime victims' rights are in the Constitution. So in a nutshell, that's what I do. So there's some other things out there that I'm working on, passing a law or a bill where people in the beauty industry can get, or part of their training when they go to beauty school would be to how to identify domestic violence. Because oftentimes when you go to the salon, that's where you open up and you share certain things. And there's just certain things that they can look out for to know whether or not this person is a victim and how they can help them. So that's another piece of legislation that I'm going to be working on as a legislative advocate.
I just love you. And you have your boots to the ground.
It's those things, people don't, those are the things that are behind the scenes. People don't always see unless I did a TV interview or unless I'm talking about it. But those are the things that are important. Like if you can change the laws and, get the Constitution in favor of victims, it's a great thing.
Very, very true. I definitely applaud your efforts for being the boots on the ground. It's not just about the talking. It's not just about us sharing, but it's about doing. And that is something that I absolutely admire about you. So thank you.
Thank you.
For
Thank you.
advocating for all of us. So I'm probably thinking right now that there's probably some women that are listening and wondering, like, what do I do now? Right? Like, how do I get past this abuse? What are some steps? Do you have maybe a couple gems for our ladies?
So for someone that may be in an abusive relationship, or maybe they're out and they just need to move forward, or both.
Yeah, let's try both. Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things, oftentimes we blame ourselves for the abuse, and we come up with all these reasons why we need to stay, right? I need to stay because he really does love me. There's just, oh, I'm staying for the kids. And there's all these reasons why we feel like that we have to stay, and then we blame ourselves. So the first thing is that it's not your fault, right? So stop blaming yourself for the abuse, because it's not you. Most abusers have that narcissistic personality disorder, and so they know how to make you feel like everything is your fault when it's really not. The second thing is there is a beautiful life outside of abuse, and it's so peaceful. And anything that does not bring you peace, it is not of God, and it is not for you, because he is not the author of confusion, but of peace and a sound mind. And so when people are like, oh, you shouldn't get a divorce. Of course, he's abusive. You need to go pray. Well, the Bible says that God is not the author of confusion.
Right.
And so that's how I, when people are like, oh, go home and pray for him. And no, he's not the author of confusion, but of peace and a sound mind. And right now I'm not at peace and I can't function. And so I apply that to every area of my life. And if it doesn't bring me peace, I cannot do it. I'm sorry. I just can't. And that's for everything: relationships, friendships, jobs. I just can't do it, because peace is so important to me. So if you think about just being at peace, it's so much better than being in an abusive relationship. And I know it's hard to leave, so then you have to come up with a domestic violence safety plan. And so you can, contact the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, the Still Standing Alliance, my organization. We help with domestic violence safety planning so that you can leave safely. Because when you leave that relationship, that's the most dangerous time for any victim, is the day that they try to leave. And that's most of the time when they get injured the most, or you see a lot of deaths. So just making sure that you do it the right way and that you're safe. So the other thing, if you're already out of that relationship, what do I do next? How do I move forward in life? It is a long process. I promise you, I did not leave that relationship and pop up as Tamiko Lowry-Pugh, the empowering diva. I was completely broken and had to go through an entire transformation. Oftentimes we think, oh, I got to pick up the pieces and I'm going to put the pieces back together. And that's what I kept thinking. And God was like, no, there are no pieces to put back together, because I've created something new. I've created a new creature. So you become this new person. You're not that old person anymore that was abused and broken. You are this new person. So if you can think about not even putting the pieces back together, but creating this new version of your best self. And when I learned that, I was like, the new version, who do I want Tamiko to be? What's the new version? I want her to be like fierce and fabulous and not afraid to speak, because I was always told, well, you didn't finish college. Like, my abuser would tell me, you didn't finish college. Nobody want to hear what you have to say. I always wanted to be a speaker, just didn't know how I was going to do it. And I didn't know that situation would allow me to. But so everything he told me that I couldn't do, I did intentionally, because I was like, this is the new Tamiko. She's not broken anymore. She's not sad. She's happy. She's free spirited. She's excited about life. And that's what you have to do. Literally, you're creating something new. It's in the Bible. I promise you that scripture. There's a scripture, I think it's in 2 Corinthians, that talks about becoming a new person and the old life is gone. A new life has begun. Ooh. So I'm not making that up.
I know you did. She said, I'm not making it up. I love that. Like, you are new. Like, there's no pieces to be put back together. That was gold right there. Ooh, I hope somebody wrote that down, because that right there could probably sum up everything right here.
I mean, how often do we say, oh, girl, I got to put these pieces back together again. I got to put the pieces. What pieces? They're broken. No. Start new. Stop doing that. Stop it.
Cut it out.
Yes.
I love it. Okay, so if you are the empowering diva, so give me one word that somebody could keep in mind, keep in their spirit to like get them through on a daily basis. One word.
Ooh, one word. Oh, this is a great question. Okay, I want this to be a good one, so I'm thinking.
I love throwing these out there because I'm like, ooh, let me see what they come up with.
I mean, I guess I have to go back to peace. Because every time something happens, I think peace. Am I having peace in this moment right now?
Yes.
Is there peace in this moment for me? So it would have to be peace.
Ooh, I love it. I had a feeling you were going to say peace because
Yeah,
I was listening to your whole story, and I was like, I feel like it's going to be peace, and it definitely is. And there's this peace about you. I don't know if you really like realize it, like even being around you, like there was this air about you. There's this resilience. There's peace. And I don't think that we really understand what that peace really looks like or feels like until we truly experience it. And yes, peace is your word.
Yes, that's it. Peace.
I am so happy. I'm so grateful to have had you on this episode today. I know somebody took something powerful from you. I know you gave back some power to somebody, and you definitely imparted some wisdom into me. And I'm just grateful for your existence. I'm grateful for you being on the episode today. And I cannot let you go until you tell the people how they can get in contact with you, any new things you got coming up. Spill the tea. Spill the tea.
Awesome. Absolutely. So all of my social media, you can follow me. It is my name, Tamiko Lowry-Pugh, Tamiko Lowry-Pugh. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm on Snapchat, but I really don't use it that much. But everything else is Tamiko Lowry-Pugh. The website is Tamiko Lowry-Pugh. The website is TamikoLowry.com. And currently, I actually don't have anything coming up. And let me just explain why. Last year, I worked really extremely hard on working on that crime victims' rights bill. I had a publicist. I traveled the country speaking and teaching and doing book tours, and I was tired. Like I served so much last year. So this year, I'm taking some time out for peace. Right? So that's my word for the year. It's peace. I'm taking some time out for myself, self-care. You'll see me on the beach every Sunday just because I want to be there. I want to go to the beach, so I'm going to go to the beach. So this year I don't have a lot going on personally, but I'm supporting other people's ministries and what they do. So personally, there's not a whole lot. In October, we do have our annual Purple Affair for the Still Standing Alliance, and that is our annual fundraiser. So this year, the theme is Still Standing and Stepping Out the Purple Affair, Cocktails for a Cause. So it'll be like a wine tasting. Everybody will come out with their fabulous purple dresses and cocktail attire. Live music will honor a couple of people in the community who have done work for domestic violence, and we will honor and celebrate our survivors on that night. And so that's going to be the first Saturday of October, and you'll be able to get all that information from my website at TamikoLowry.com.
You know it's time.